Hey guys, it's Gina. Welcome to the place where your growth meets mine. People who are not ready to grow do not ask questions like, why am I here? They are distracted. They keep scrolling. They let the noise fill the space where understanding could live. Here is something that very few people ever stop to consider. You are not your thoughts. Let that sit for a moment. You're not your thoughts. You are the one who notices your thoughts. Right now, thoughts are moving through your mind. Some are about what will you do later today. Some are fragments of conversations that you had yesterday. Some are evaluations. Is this interesting? Is this worth my time? Some are completely unconscious. Electrical whispers you will never even register. And somewhere behind all that movement, somewhere steady, somewhere watching, there is you, the observer, the one who is aware that all this is happening. That distinction between the thinker and the observer is not a philosophical game. It is one of the most practical things that a person can understand about themselves. Because once you can see your thoughts, instead of simply being inside them, you gain something extraordinary, the ability to choose. Now let us talk about attention. Attention is not your eyes moving across a screen. It is not the direction that your head is turning. Attention is the directed energy of your awareness. It is the beam of light that your consciousness shines on any given thing. And whenever that beam lands, that thing becomes real to you. Think about it this way. There are thousands of sensory signals reaching your brain right now. The temperature of the air against your skin, the subtle sound of the room around you, the pressure of whatever surface that you are sitting on, the micro movements of your own breath. Your brain is receiving all of it, but you're not conscious of it most of the time. You are only conscious of what your attention selects. Attention is the editor of your experience. It decides what gets through. Everything now here is where this becomes genuinely important for your life. If attention determines what you experience, if attention is the gatekeeper of your conscious reality, then whoever or whatever controls your attention effectively controls your world. Think about the last time that you were absorbed in worry. Like truly absorbed. Your body was somewhere at a dining table, in a meeting, lying in bedside, but your mind was somewhere else entirely. In that moment, the dinner, the meeting, etc., or the persons around you, they barely existed for you, not because they were not there, but because your attention was elsewhere. That is how powerful your attention is. It can remove things from your reality without moving them an inch. And the reverse is also true. When you are fully present with something, truly attending to it, that thing becomes vivid, real, and meaningful in a way that nothing else in your life is at that moment. You have had those moments, we all have. A conversation where time disappeared, or a piece of music that made the world go quiet. A moment with your child or your partner or a friend where everything else fell away. Those moments were not accidents. They were what life feels like when attention is fully placed. And the question is, how often does that happen by your choice, and how often does it happen because something external grabbed your focus and pulled? For most people, the honest answer is more often grabbed than chosen. And that is not a personal failing, it is a result of a living world that has been architected very deliberately by very intelligent people to capture and hold your attention without your permission. We will talk about that more in another moment, but first I want to make sure that we understand the second half of this equation, thought. Most of us were never taught how thinking actually works. We were taught what to think in school, at home, through culture, but we rarely were taught the mechanisms of the process itself. So let me offer you something here that I think will be genuinely useful. Your mind operates on multiple levels simultaneously. There is the level you are aware of, the running commentary, the deliberate reasoning, the conscious decisions. And then there is the vast layer beneath that, which is the automatic, fast running in the background, shaping your reactions, shaping your perceptions, your feelings, long before your conscious mind gets involved. Neuroscience has a name for these two systems, but the labels matter less than the reality that they describe. Most of the day, researchers estimate somewhere between 90 to 95% of your mental activity is running on automatic systems. Not the deliberate one. This means that most of your waking hours you are not truly thinking, you are running patterns, deeply worn grooves of thought and reactions that were carved by every experience that you have ever had, every belief that you observed, every trauma, every endured, every joy that you repeated. Your mind, in many ways, is a pattern machine, and a pattern is enormously useful. They allow you to drive a car while holding a conversation or to navigate familiar situations without burning enormous mental energy. So basically, to function efficiently in a complex world. But patterns also have a shadow side, because patterns do not distinguish between what is useful and not useful. They simply repeat. The pattern of the self-doubt that formed when you have failed at something as a child will repeat in boardrooms and relationships decades later, unless you become conscious of it. The pattern of withdrawal that helped you survive a difficult period will still activate in situations where connection would serve you far better. Your patterns protect you, and your patterns constrain you at the same time, often. And there is a concept that I want to give you today that I believe is one of the most transformative ideas that a human being can internalize. Between every stimulus and your response to it, between anything that happens to you and what you do next, there is a space. That space is where your freedom lives. And for most people, that space is almost invisible. Something happens, a critical email arrives, our partner says something sharp, or a plan falls apart, and the response comes almost instantly. The emotional reaction floods in, and the behavior follows almost automatically, as if there were no choices involved. But there was a choice. There is always a choice. The space just collapsed so quickly that it was invisible. The entire practice of self-understanding, of growing into a more conscious, deliberate human being, is essentially the practice of widening that space. Not eliminating your reactions, not becoming cold or detached or empty, but just creating enough room between what happens and what you do next to actually choose. That is the freedom in most practical form of it. Not the absence of difficulty, not a life without a challenge or pain, but the ability to meet what comes with a response that is yours, but genuinely yours, consciously yours, rather than simply an echo of an old pattern. What we inherit without knowing it is here. It is something that might be uncomfortable to sit with, and I ask you to stay with it anyway because it matters. Your sense of whether you're capable of or not largely installed in your childhood. Your understanding whether the world is safe or dangerous is shaped by early experiences you may not even consciously remember. Your beliefs about what you deserve, what is possible for someone like you, what love looks like, what success should feel like, most of it arrived before you had the cognitive tools to question it. Here is a profound implication of that fact. Much of what feels like just who I am, it's not. It is who you were shaped to be, and those are very different things. You are not your conditioning, you are something deeper than your conditioning. Something that has the capacity to look at the conditioning, to see it clearly, and to decide, consciously, deliberately decide what you want to keep and what you are ready to let go. And that is not a small thing, that is everything. You are not trying to reclaim your attention in a neutral environment. You are trying to reclaim your attention in an environment that was specifically designed to take it. Every major platform that you interact with, every app, every feed, every notification system was built by teams of extraordinarily intelligent people whose single professional objective was keep your attention engaged as long as possible. They did not do this carelessly. They studied the neuroscience of reward, of variable reinforcement, of social comparison and validation. They used that knowledge to build systems that are, and I say this without any exaggeration, among the most sophisticated attention capture mechanism ever created. The result is a world where every idle moment is an opportunity for something external to fill your mind, where discomfort, which is often the very signal that growth is nearby, gets immediately numbed by the next piece of content, where depth becomes harder and harder to access because shallow simulation is always immediately available. I'm saying this because understanding the forces acting on you is the beginning of navigating them. You cannot reclaim something you do not realize is being taken. What this does to the inner life, here is what a life of continuous external simulation does to a person slowly over time. It makes solitude uncomfortable. Not because solitude is something bad, it is actually where the deepest understanding of the self occurs, but because we become habituated to constant input. So silence starts to feel like something is wrong. Being alone with your own thoughts starts to feel like a deprivation rather than nourishment. It shortens the threshold for depth. When we are constantly switching attention, every second sustained focus on anything complex becomes genuinely difficult. And not because we are less intelligent, but because the muscle of sustained attention has not been exercised. And perhaps most profoundly, it disconnects us from our own inner signal. Your emotions are information. Your discomfort is pointing at something. Unexplained sadness, all of it is data about your inner life. But when the default response to any discomfort is immediate distraction, you never get to read that data. You never get to understand what it's trying to tell you. So you stay stranger to yourself. And a stranger to yourself is someone who will always struggle to live with intention, because intention requires knowing who you actually are and what you actually want. So how do you begin to know yourself? Like truly know yourself, not just theoretically. I want to give you something here which is real and not a list of abstract principles, but a genuine framework for self-practice of understanding. First of all, become a curious observer of yourself. The single most powerful shift that you can make is this. Stop judging your inner life and start observing it. Most of us have a running internal commentary like good thought, bad thought, I should not feel this. Why do I always do that? What is wrong with me? That evaluative voice is not self-awareness, it is self-judgment. And self-judgment closes things down. It makes us defensive, ashamed, unwilling to look honestly at what is actually there. Curiosity opens things up. When you feel anxious, instead of I should not feel anxious, try that is interesting. What is this anxiety about? What in my body do I feel it? So you are not trying to fix yourself, you're trying to understand yourself, which is completely different. Second, create space for your own signal. You cannot hear yourself in a constant noise. This does not require hours of silence to elaborate rituals. It just requires small, consistent pockets of unstructured time. Time where you are not consuming, not producing, not performing, but just being. A walk with your headphones, for example, 5 minutes in the morning before you pick up your phone, a few moments at night before sleep. Like simply noticing what is moving through your mind. And in those spaces, pay attention to what arises and do not analyze it immediately, but just notice it. What thoughts keep coming back? What feelings are underneath the surface of your day? When you find yourself in a strong emotional reaction like anger, fear, defensiveness, jealousy, shame, pause before you act. Not forever, just long enough to ask yourself one question. Is what I'm about to do coming from what I want to be or from an old pattern being triggered? You don't need to have the perfect answer. You do not even need to fully understand the pattern. Just the act of pausing and asking the question begins to widen that space. It begins to create a moment of genuine choice, where before was only reflex. And over time, that moment of choice grows, and with it, your freedom grows. Let your values become the compass for your attention. Gradually, consistently, with patience and self-compassion, begin redirecting your focus towards what you have decided that actually matters. And this is what is called alignment. And alignment feels like coming home. I want to close this with something that I think often goes unsaid in conversations like this one. Real change, the kind that actually transforms a life, does not happen in a moment of inspiration. It happens in the ordinary moments that follow. In the moment when you reach your phone out of habit and pause instead. In the moment where an old pattern triggers and you choose just this once to respond differently. In the morning when you sit quietly for 5 minutes instead of immediately filling your mind with the world's noise. In those small, invisible, uncelebrated moments, that is where you actually understand what actually is changing. And here's what I want you to understand about that process, that it is not linear. You will have days of profound clarity, followed by days where every old pattern comes floating back as if nothing ever shifted. You will make choices that you are proud of and choices you're not proud of. You will understand yourself deeply in some moments and feel completely lost in others, and that is not a failure, that is the actual shape of human growth. The only thing that matters here is that you keep returning. Keep returning to the observation, keep returning to the curiosity, keep returning to the question of who you want to be rather than whether your attention is here today in this moment or is pointed in that direction. You are already more than you think, and here is something that I deeply believe, and I wanted to offer it to you as we close. The fact that you are here, that you are asking those questions, that some part of you refuses to simply drift throughout your life on autopilot, that is not ordinary. Most people never arrive at this kind of inquiry. Most people live their entire lives inside their inherited patterns instead of stepping back far enough to see them. You have stepped back. That stepping back, that willingness to look honestly at yourself, to question the direction of your own attention, to take responsibility by your inner life, that is the beginning of everything. Every meaningful change begins there. So you're not behind and you're not broken. You're not someone who needs to become a different kind of person. You are someone who is learning to see yourself clearly. And that clarity gradually, consistently over time, will change everything. Hey guys, it's Gina. Welcome to the place where your growth meets mine. I'll see you next time.